Hi everyone, I want to welcome you all to our webinar tonight titled Israel and Azerbaijan against Iranian-backed radical religious terrorism, challenges and opportunities for cooperation. Let me introduce myself. My name is Rafael Nabizadeh. I did my master's degree in Israel in Security and Diplomacy program at Tel Aviv University, and I was a fellow at the Irving Cotler Institute for Democracy, Human Rights and Justice. Presently, I sit on the audit committee of the Donna Grassi Center for Diplomacy, who is sponsoring tonight's webinar. And tonight we will hear from 7 speakers, including me, before we have a short time for questions and answers. During the question and answer, during the Q&A section, I will give the questions to the presenters. So if you have questions, write them in the chat and explain to me who you would like to direct them towards, and I will moderate that Q&A section. I'd like to introduce our first speaker of the night, Tarlan Ahmadov, the president and founder of the Azerbaijani Society of Maine. Raised in Baku, Azerbaijan, he has a master's in history from Baku State University. He is fluent in 6 languages. After immigrating to the United States, he worked for over 18 years with the Catholic Charities of Maine as a refugee settlement director and for the last 6 years as the refugee coordinator. We will discuss how Iran threatens both Israel and Azerbaijan. The floor is yours, Mr. Tarlan Ahmadov.
Good evening there, and good morning, good afternoon for here in North America. I am very honored to be here today with you guys. And of course, this topic is very complex. As you know, it's not easy to explain everything within 10, 15 minutes, or even an hour. But I would just go back to, I think, history, because history is really important to know, especially the historical evidences connected Azerbaijan, modern Azerbaijan, and how we've been a part of the Safavi and Qajar dynasty. As you know, in 1499, there's in modern Iran, there's a new kind of kingdom established under Safavi, Ismail Hatay, and today's Azerbaijan was a part of Safavi kingdom. And then Safavi was dynasty have been changed, and the new Qajar came, and they've been in the ruling almost 200 years. And very interestingly, so the kings of that time, Safavi and Qajar's dynasty, they have to be prince of Tabriz, which is the center of Azerbaijan in today's Iran, and also they've been Tabriz, the capital city. So, as you know, between Russia and Iran, there was a war in 1828 under Turkmenchai Act, or treaty. Today's Azerbaijan became a part of the Russian Empire, and the rest of today's Iran become, whatever it is now. So the biggest part of Azerbaijan is in the part of today's Iran, and the 2 provinces, they call this Eastern and Western Iran, Azerbaijan in today's Iran. And as you also know, the Qajar dynasty has been seized in 1920s, and the new Pahlavi dynasty came up. It's very interestingly to see the discrimination and Iranization or Persification of all these minorities. Although Azerbaijan minority within Iran is the largest one, it's about 35+ million people, they have been pushed to give their identity and all the significance of the culture and everything that connected to Azeris are always being diminished. The same rules, it's like under the Pahlavi came to the new republic in 1979 when the Iran become Islamic, after Islamic Revolution become Islamic Republic of Iran. The same discriminatory policy become their governmental policy. Not only, discriminating the ethnic, of course, minorities, but also religious minorities of Jews, of course, others, small Baha'is and the Christians and so on. But this Iranian policy, which is we see last 40+ years, is not only concentrating and focusing on just controlling their own country, but also building the regional power, which we can call government-sponsored terrorism, which was the first thing, of course, again, Israel and many other countries. And the threat is coming huge the last 20 years. So, of course, we see all these fights and, Iran has, with Iraq, and then influence that Iran got lately when Obama administration give up with some, their influence in Iraq and so on, in Syria specifically. So we see Iran becoming so powerful in terms of this regionally, and having the specific terrorism and all this against to Israel. And in this part, of course, Azerbaijan become a very important part of this all their governmental terrorism and also threat to the regional security. So we see, of course, Iran specifically was supporting Armenia in all this territorial claim against Azerbaijan. Of course, the Armenia occupied Azerbaijan territory 20% over the last about 30 years. And Iran was one of the sponsoring and supportive to Armenia with the money, with weapons, and of course influence, and also giving them all the resources to support this occupation. But at the same time, they also blaming Azerbaijan being pro-Israeli and building the relationship. So the last 30 years, of course, with the presidency of Heydar Aliyev, our national leader, and then Ilham Aliyev, this support to Israel and bilateral connection between these two countries been only growing, which makes Iran so concerned. And this during we also see 2020 when we had the liberation of the Karabakh, the Iran was openly pro-Armenian and also opened some routes for supporting Karabakh Armenians or separatist Armenians there with their weapons, and it was really obviously. And after 44 days, Iran clearly threatened territorial integrity of Azerbaijan, claiming that Azerbaijan is the former part of Iran. So, like going back for 200-300 years ago, and this, of course, specifically threatening, our integrity, our the independency was not accepted. In Azerbaijan, also been very strong of resisting this push. Moreover, Azerbaijan, as you know, opened political presence in Israel and in specifically embassy, which was like we all waited for many years, and that relationship become much more stronger than even before. Not only by selling the oil to Israel, about 40%, as you know, Israeli oil come from Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan, and plus, all this exchange of technology and support with military equipment to Azerbaijan army, and also instructions was really important. And we see this as very interestingly how it's all developing. But as you know, this terrorism in Iran and supported by government, it is really becomes not only obviously, but it's very blunt. So as you know, during this year, we had some assassination of our people in embassy. So the embassy was attacked in Tehran. And since that time, Azerbaijan closed embassy over there. So we also see the assassination or, attempt assassination to the Azerbaijan member of parliament. And we also see a huge spy network of Iranian spy in Azerbaijan against the Azerbaijan government and Israel And then we also saw that attempt to kind of assault and to the Israel embassy in Baku. So this is just a lot of going on in this context. So it is just we can say we are on the same boat, Azerbaijan and Israel, and Iran has a huge, of course, power to push both of these countries in a different ways. But I think in my kind of conclusion, I wanted to say being together in this for Israel and Azerbaijan is very important to stand against this governmental terror that is supported by government of Iran, and specifically also nuclear power that could be a part of the Iranian military, which will be threatened all this regional and of course us as a neighbors there. And in my opinion, we all here in America, Azeris in America, we are working very hard and also connected with the Jewish communities to support Jewish brothers and sisters, specifically what's happened right now in Gaza, and of course all this killing of 1,400 Jews and Israelis in October 7th. It was like shocked all of us, but it was not surprising because we know that all these proxies of Iran are been ready for that for many, many years. They've been supported financially by the military equipment from Iran and their also allies. And this is a big, big regional threat and, of course, challenges. And hopefully we all will work together to overcome these challenges. And I only wish and support Israel to deal with this at the moment with all this in Gaza. I don't know, did I do well, Rachel? No.
Yes, very
Any
good.
questions? I try to kind of put together a lot of things, but I think it's really important to really come up from what is happening like 400, 300 years, 300 years ago, and then go to the in the 20th century and then 21st century. And this is really all connected. It's not just like a fact for this time. It's been for many, many years. And just building this all, the power that they against, democratic countries and nations that wanted to live freely, like Israel wants to exist as a free country, the country with a lot of diversity, same as Azerbaijan. And of course, Iran doesn't want to. And Iran always see the southern Azeris who live 35 million as their threat for their, statehood. Although Azerbaijan never been asking for or claiming for any territorial or anything against Iran, it's always vice versa. Thank you. I hope it was something helpful.
Mr. Tarlan, I would like to ask you a question if it's possible.
Of course, Mr. Mordechai.
To what degree Azerbaijani people in Iran are taking part in the Iranian makeup as people who are loyal to Iran?
I wanted to tell you very interesting, Mr. Kedar. I've been living in Iran, working before I come to here. So I speak fluent Persian, and I worked as a contracting with consulate, doing some translations and working. Anyway, so I wanted to tell you in a very bottom line, we can see the people in this very Azerbaijani cities like Tabriz, Urmia, and Ardabil. A lot of people are pro-Azerbaijani, and they will be sacrifice themselves for the independence of the northern brothers. But of course, as you understand, the policy of Iranian government for the last 100+ years, when they've been diminishing all the cultural evidences or the significance of minorities, it is of course play a huge role. In some Iranians, they will call, when I ask them, what is your nationality? Oh, I'm Iranian. I said, okay, I know you're Iranian, but what's your ethnicity? I'm Iranian. I said, you're Iranian citizen. You're a citizen of Iran. I could be a citizen of the United States, but my, the nationality, I'm Azerbaijani. I am very proud being Azerbaijani Americans. And I would never give my Azerbaijani identity because this is who I am. Like the same thing for my Jewish brother and sister would say, I am Jewish, and they are proud of you. But how you speak Azeri, your mom and dad speak Azerbaijan, you speak also Persian. But he said, no, I'm Iranian. That's how the cleansing, the brainwash for decades in their school system. As you know, they cannot speak in Azeri. They don't have any newspaper. They have no cultural, like any entertainment even. So everything is, as you know, it's very difficult in Iran. So I've been in some...
They speak at home? At home they speak Azeri, right?
They speak Azeri, and of course the newer generation speak Persian. I've been raised in Soviet Union. I wanted to tell you, of course, born in Soviet Union, raised in Soviet Union, and I saw also collapse of Soviet Union. We also been pushed to speak Russian and forget about our own languages. I wanted to be very honest with you. I started speaking Azerbaijani when I was almost adult. So I see the crash of Soviet Union. So Azeri been in school, so was not so much like a pushed. So we had only 1 hour or 2 hours in a week in the school, and I went to the Russian kind of school. But same things in Iran, but they don't have. But at least in Azerbaijan, we have Azerbaijani school too. At that time, so people make choices. If you want to go to Russian school or you go to Azerbaijan, but Iran, they don't have any choices. Did it answer your question?
Yeah, okay, yeah, definitely.
I'm so sorry. I've been there for many times and many years, and in Iran, travel across a beautiful country. So nice people, but unfortunately, they are also not able to change anything. And they try, but as you know, there is no appetite. And I was always, when I met with the here legislature in America, people like senator and congressmen. I've been last year actually with very interesting delegation from Israel, meeting with some think tank in Washington D.C. So we are talking about Abraham Accord. So there is no appetite against Iran. So there is a lobby, Iranian lobby, which is very connected with Armenian lobby so much here. They are kind of trying a lot to stop kind of anything against, or even sanction doesn't help anything. So there should be like very tremendous fundamental changes in the policy of United States and Canada and so on to change the situation in Iran. They saw that people are died and killed every single day in Iran, nothing happened. It's just sanctions.
Since Qatar is paying people, journalists and politicians, so nobody will act against Qatar's ally.
Exactly. And you know how the American, unfortunately, like the political establishment it's all corrupted in a different way. Today we had also heard that they stopped military support to Azerbaijan, and 907, they kind of, this is, and they call this support to Armenia 2023. So that's just such a unbelievable act, what they do. And we, as been victim of 30 years of occupation Armenian government, we now like not victims, like we're aggressors. This is how it is. Everything is, like upside down in this policy, and the foreign policy of the U.S. is just
talking about Iran. Until 1979, we had an embassy in Tehran, I think with about 80 people working there during the Shah regime, and we had a good relationship. And then what happened? The Khomeini came, this very fanatic religious leader, came to Iran, and everything changed. Now Iran became the enemy of Israel, in supporting Hezbollah, in supporting all other Hamas, the Muslim Brothers. What happened here? Really, are the people of Iran really they hate Israel, or the regime is imposing itself on the Iranian people? What's happening there?
Government, because since October 7th, I'm organizing demonstrations. Who's marching beside me? Iranian people here. Every time Iranians for Israel, it's full over here. And referring back to Canadian policy in reference to IRI, Justin Trudeau refused to declare Iranian regime as terrorist, and it's been discovered that Trudeau's government in the last 8 years, and today, this morning, Pierre Poilievre stated some scary facts. Hundreds of terrorists from Iran are here. A lot of them are active. And a lot of Iranians who are advocating for Israel, their lives are being threatened. It's a serious issue. And Armenians, referring to Azerbaijan being an aggressor, referred Israel in the same situation. And the scary fact is, Armenians are using Jewish platform. When I tell Jewish people here that Armenians are behind pogroms in Babylon, Ottoman Empire, Armenians are the creator of Arafat, Armenian created Hamas. Armenian general that they glorified is there ordered to slaughter 180,000 Jews. Armenians buried 5,000 Jews alive in Guba. Liberal Jews look at me and say, what are you talking about? You're from Azerbaijan, that's why you're saying that. I said, it has nothing to do me being from Azerbaijan or anything else. These are the facts. Israel and Azerbaijan are exactly in the same, like, a woman raped with the bloody crotches walking, they're parading them around, and they're saying that, oh, this didn't happen. I mean, where are the people who to advocate? Where are the people who advocated for women of Khojali? Children, 11 years old girl being raped by Armenian Dashnak. You need to read Zori Balayan. The same thing, Hamas in Armenia. And few days before October 7th, Armenian Asala Dashnaks said, no Jew will walk safe in Israel. How can Jews don't realize the correlation between Armenian and Hamas and Hezbollah? When are the Jews going to wake up that these are the Amalek, the Trojan horse that Jews are embracing and allowing them? By the way, Armenians have never opened their archives claiming genocide. Look at their census. Look at their stats. And second of all, during World War I, everybody was being killed. And when the Dashnaks made a deal with Russia, they were killing Jews, Kurds, and Turks. And where is this thing comes from? Cutting the pregnant woman's stomach and getting the baby out. That's Armenian style. That's what it is. And when they were exiling to Iraq, Turks were taking them to Iraq. It was the Kurds mainly who killed Armenians. It was a massacre. What happened to them was incredibly horrible. But it was not genocide like for Jews who were killed because we're Jews. And Armenians have never opened their archives. Somehow they managed to convince the world, just like Palestinians convinced the world that there's a Gaza genocide. People are sleeping. People have lost their logic. And they don't really have independent thinking. Honestly, they don't do their own research.
Esther, I am 100% agree with you. If you see behind me,
the question and answer
building
is supposed to be at the end, not now. There's supposed to be order with the
Because
speakers.
I have to introduce our next speaker. I apologize, but I have to introduce our next
Not a problem. I just wanted to say, Esther, you're right. I am telling my Jewish friends in here in America that I am more Jewish than they are, because they believe all this media. And if you see this behind me, it's from Haifa.
Yeah. Baha'i Garden.
So what I just wanted to add one sentence, this radicalization, an expert of the Islamic Shia, radical things to Azerbaijan, been for the last 30 years. Many Azeri young people has been taken, introduced to the Qum, which is the center of religious Shiism in Iran, and they brainwashed and sent back to Azerbaijan, and they are working against the Azerbaijan nation government. They wanted to change to the reality to whatever it is in Iran. But we are very strong. We are not going to allow this because we are a very open, free country. Thank you. Sorry, Rafael, for long discussion.
So our next speaker is prominent Middle East scholar, Dr. Mordechai Kedar, who is a member of the board at the Donald Grassi Center for Diplomacy. Dr. Mordechai Kedar was born in Tel Aviv and he's an expert in Israeli Arab culture. He served for 25 years in IDF military intelligence. He holds a PhD from Bar-Ilan University. Dr. Mordechai Kedar is fluent in Hebrew, Arabic, and English. He is going to discuss the sexual violence Hamas committed against Israeli women and draw parallels to the Yazidi genocide. He will also speak on Iran's role in this sexual violence. The floor is yours, Dr. Mordechai Kedar.
Well, sexual violence is not unique here in the Middle East. First World War, Second World War saw the same things in Europe, in other parts of the world. Japan actually was trafficking Chinese women as part of the war against China, or occupation of parts of China. The Japanese did it. The Russians were practicing in Africa, in many places, Biafra, Rwanda, Darfur, in Sudan. Sexual crimes against the people who were defeated is well-known practice in many cultures, and I would even say most of the cultures of the world. You say now in English, vow to the defeated ones, or to the people who failed in the battle, and this is what happens to their wives, to their children, to the girls. It is, I would say, almost a global phenomenon. However, and here we come to the however. In Iran, it became like an art. First of all, we all remember the demonstration in 2009, where students burst into the street when the second elections of Ahmadinejad, he won the elections, although, according to all the polls, he would lose to Mousavi, who ran to presidency those days. And students burst to the streets because they didn't want Ahmadinejad again, because they thought that Mousavi would be much better. Kirby also was a candidate in those elections. So they ran to the streets in order to demonstrate, and the local authorities caught thousands of them from the students, and the boys were shot, not only in the head, but in other parts of the body, in order to maim them and to cripple them. But the girls were all raped in jail, and this was not even one of them remained virgin. And as you might know, the tradition in Iran is, nobody is supposed to touch a lady until the wedding. And here, all of them were raped. And this was a big, big shame for the girls and for the families. But nobody could do anything because it was done by the government, or by the government officials, policemen, army people, or Pasdaran actually, who did it in the camps which they were kept. And ever since then, until recently, what happened with the Mahsa Amini, girls were very much afraid of demonstrating because they knew what might be their punishment as ladies who will be raped. In other cases, we also saw sheer violence against women, especially under the idea that they are not wearing the chador as they should. And only recently it happened again with another lady from Kurdistan. I forgot her name. So this is the violence against women is something which became systemic in Iran, especially in order to humiliate, in order to maim, in order finally to kill them as violators of the law, which is viewed as sacred in Iran. You see the same thing happens also with the Iranian supported regime in Syria. the Assad regime systematically, since the what was called the Arab Spring started in March of 2011, the Syrian regime deliberately aims at humiliating girls and women by raping them, and the soldiers of the government are doing it very, very willingly, because this is a way to enjoy life, already having the goodies of heaven already in this world. And you see it again, and they are supported heavily by the Iranian regime. And don't forget that the kind of regime in Syria, representing the Alawi minority, which is a very powerful one, although it's small, yet it was empowered by the French mandate already in the 30s and the 40s, until France withdrew from Syria in 1943. So these Alawis became actually the fighters in the army, in the police, in the intelligence especially, and they took the country over in Syria in 1966, the military Ba'ath revolution, and ever since then they do the same thing to others. And everybody knows that's what they do to girls and women of the people who they hate. And they hate most of the Syrians, because most of the Syrians hate them. And wherever you go, and now what happened with Hamas, which also was supported by Iran, and the way they raped the girls in near Gaza when they on October 7th, the same picture, the same issue, the same willing to humiliate the others in order to prove to everyone that they are the superior and they are above everything. No, they don't care about the international law. They don't care about human rights. They don't care about women's rights. They don't care about any other people's rights, because they consider themselves to be superior and all the others are inferior. So sexual crimes, by the way, in Yemen as well, you see the Houthis do the same thing to the women and girls of the government, or the government supporting the population in Yemen. You see exactly the same thing. And of course in Iraq, you see it on right, left, and center, that girls and women are being raped by the Iranian militias, who actually turned it into an art, how to do it. And this is devastating, because the matter of virginity is very important in the Middle East, while the Iranians definitely are targeting exactly this in order to humiliate the people and to break their soul and their morale, and to target the most sensitive nerve in the Middle Eastern culture, which is the virginity of the girl. And since the Iranians view the Arabs as inferior anyway, so they feel that they can do whatever they like to Arabs and to other minorities. And in Iran, I heard the same things about in Balochistan, what they do in Kurdistan, and definitely I would say the Persians in general are those who see themselves as sitting on the top of the world, and all the others are under their feet, under their shoes, and therefore they allow themselves to do whatever they like, especially sexual assault on whoever they like. Therefore, I think these things should be exposed, and unfortunately, people do not talk about this, because they could talk about the persecution of minorities in Iran, the Azerbaijani one, the Kurdish one, the Arab one, and the Ahwaz, the Baluchi, the Turkmens. Everybody talks about human rights and political freedoms, which are being violated in Iran. Yet, people try to refrain from talking about sexual crimes, because, in my humble view, it's not politically correct to talk about this, because you actually say that all the others actually have lost their virginity and they are defiled and all these things. It's not nice to talk about these things because people think that the girls who went through this atrocity, they actually do not want to speak about this because they want to suppress this event from the memory. I think it's wrong. Just look at this wave of Me Too. Me Too actually put many women out of the closet in order to expose what was done to them, how they were abused, how were they humiliated, how they were raped, and how they were target of sexual assault. And I think that it's time that all those who suffered from the Iranian mindset, which appears in many other places, like in Gaza, what we saw, near Gaza, this should be exposed. This should be, out there, because if there is something which might bring damage to the Iranian image, is this. Because as long as they oppress people, people could say, hey, the others are terrorists. As long as they, oppress, cultural rights of other minorities, say, okay, we Americans might do the same thing because we want everybody to speak English. Okay, but when you talk about sexual offenses, there is absolutely no way to justify it. Nobody will justify it. And if we, the targets and the victims of Iran, if we expose the systematically usage of sexual assault by Iran and its allies like Hamas, this can make a change, because nobody would dare to justify it. Even those who are not usually with Israel, or even those of the intersectionality in the United States of America, even those who would justify what Iran is doing here and there, nobody would dare to say anything positive about sexual offenses. And this is why, in my humble view, we can use it against Iran and expose it, and not only and emphasize on this issue, because this can bring the change in the world attitude to Iran.
By the way, whoever reads the Bible, the last chapter on the Bible, Cyrus, the king of Persia, of Iran, said, in my dream, God came to me and told me to send people to build the second temple in Jerusalem. He got up in the morning. He has to do something. He sent Ezra and Nehemiah. He sent them to Jerusalem. He told them, please build the second temple as God ordered me to do. And they did. So that was Cyrus. Now, in Iran, Persia, Iran, look what's happening. Rafsanjani was the president of Iran. In one time, I remember about 15 or 20 years ago, he said, we heard about Israel with the nuclear power. If they use nuclear power against us, they can destroy some part of Iran. But Israel is so small. If we use nuclear power, we can annihilate, destroy all Islam. This is what they think people. So the policy today of Israel and by the United States, we never let Iran have nuclear weapons.
I would like to, I apologize, but I have to introduce our next speaker. Unfortunately, far too many people outside of Israel have been in denial of Hamas atrocities and crimes against humanity against Israeli women and girls on October 7. Others, like Hamas, have been justifying it. So our next speaker is Esther Halevi, a prominent Azerbaijani Jewish activist in Canada who has been organizing numerous pro-Israel demonstrations in Canada, and she will discuss how Armenia views the October 7 massacre and the subsequent Hamas-Israel war. She's a political lobbyist for Israel, independent lobbyist, and the representative of Azerbaijan and Canadian Jewish community, anti-war and anti-poverty advocate, creator of one of the largest advocacy groups for survivors of coercive control and domestic violence. The floor is yours, Esther Halevi.
You forgot to mention demonstrations for Azerbaijan during the war. You were right there in the live chat with me. Basically, I have always been saying the correlation between what's going on in Azerbaijan and Israel is the same thing. What scares me the most in radicalization of Azerbaijanis who lack education, Iran managed to brainwash some, I would say at least 20% of Azerbaijanis. And since October 7th, I received incredible support from Azerbaijanis, incredible. And I think one of them, Canadian, I think Yashar is here. He is one of the members of Azerbaijani community from southern Azerbaijan. He joined the meeting as well. He's not a speaker, but I got a lot of support. But what I read from some other Azerbaijanis is quite scary. What scares me the most is that they identify more by their religion than by their cultural identity. And I would say that it's very disappointing. Iran needs to be completely destroyed in terms of the government. Iranian people, I always talk about government, never the people, because I receive a lot of support from Iranian people. They march with me. Just on Sunday, we had politicians, people, well, many of them actually get death threats. There is a Imam Tawoudi, is a Imam of peace. Actually, he was born in Iraq, but he spent quite a bit of time in Iran. And I've been talking to him, actually. He is one of the head of Islamic Council of Canada. And he's planning a trip to Azerbaijan. And I'm invited by a bunch of other imams. Surprisingly, that Jewish woman going on a peace trip to Azerbaijan with a bunch of imams. What I wanted to say is that what we need to do is we need to show the world Armenian propaganda is very similar to Palestinian. It's all based on a false propaganda. I saw that during the war. Even the Jews, I mean, we have a one Milli Majlis politician. Her name is Nigar Argapay, I think. She always says to me that your restaurant became the embassy central for Azerbaijan. And I talked to thousands of customers who don't even know where Azerbaijan is located on a map. Very important education for us Jews take part introducing Azerbaijan, the only country in the world. People are marching on the streets of Toronto and screaming death to Jews. It will never happen in Azerbaijan. It will never happen in Azerbaijan. What's happening in New York University of Toronto, where the Jewish students cannot go to school because they're scared, will never happen in Azerbaijan. We as Jews are obligated to take a center stage and talk about Azerbaijan and Armenian conflict as well, because what I hear about what Armenians are saying here, the genocide in Azerbaijan against Armenians, I want to shake my hands, but it's the same thing is happening with Israel, the same genocide in Gaza. How about the genocide, the 1,400 people that were killed in Israel, it was solely because they're Jewish, solely because they're Jewish. I'm glad that we're having conferences like that between Israeli Jews and Azerbaijanis. We should continue. And Rachel, thank you so much for organizing this. And I'm always happy to be part of any of that arrangement as a speaker. And Dr. Kedar, it's always a pleasure to be on the same panel with you. You're mute. You need you put the speaker on I think he's talking. Dr. Kedar, turn on your microphone. I think you're talking and your
Please
microphone.
unmute yourself, Dr. Mordechai Kedar.
I think his microphone is off. Dr. Kedar met me around 20 years ago in Toronto. I don't remember how many. I think in 2008, and I think he forgot.
Thank you
It's
very
always
much,
nice.
Esther Mordechai, for an excellent speech. And we are proud that the Jewish people live here in peaceful conditions, in harmony. There is indeed a Jewish-Muslim coexistence in Azerbaijan, and we are proud of this coexistence. And
By the
thank
way,
you
going
very
back to
much for
Tarlan,
telling
I
us.
actually spoke Azerbaijani from birth. And so did 90% of Kafkazi Jews. I know Azerbaijani fluently without even an accent, just like I know Kafkazi. And it's always been, and my nephew, Roland, who I'm extremely proud of, is the same. Actually, you might know him. He did an interview with Alan Dershowitz.
Yes.
Amazing interview with Alan Dershowitz. Anyway, go ahead.
After listening to you all about Azerbaijan, you convinced me already to go and visit Azerbaijan.
Must.
I have to go. Mordechai, you go with me to Azerbaijan.
I went there with Jewish journalists in last November. They were shocked. They were shocked. It was a good experience. I think you should.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
our
Raphael,
next speaker
Mano Matsami.
is, yes, Manon Masami, an international
Hello.
advisor to the European Parliament on many issues, gender equality and the right against radical Islam, who also writes about many issues for Europa blog. She's an expert on climate change, the Arab Spring, and gender equality. She worked as a translator for human rights organizations in Brussels and partook in the struggle against religious extremism and anti-Semitism in France. She's a project partner at UNESCO on environmental issues since 2019. She has been an active member of the Liberal Party in Belgium since 2010 and a candidate in the regional elections in Brussels in May 2019. She partook in an EU delegation to Israel in October 2019, together with other young European leaders engaged in peace and dialogue in the Middle East, who also are fighting against anti-Semitism and hate speech in Europe. She also partook in a female leaders delegation to the US Congress in July 2022 to promote female leadership in the Middle East and the fight against extremism. She has been organizing conferences at the European Parliament, Liberal Party in Belgium, and demonstrations since 2019. She was a speaker at the UN in discussions about women's rights and female leadership in Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Yemen, Egypt, Turkey, Tunisia, Niger, and Iran. She has been awarded for human rights activism and was appointed an ambassador for her struggle against hate speech. In 2021, she was elected president of the Liberal Women section in Brussels and founded the European Association for the Defense of Minorities. She is going to discuss how Iran is spreading terror throughout the Middle East and Europe and why we should build an international coalition against the Iranian regime. The floor is yours, Manuel.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Raphael. Thank you, Rachel. And I would like also to thank all the speakers and mainly Dr. Mordechai. We had the pleasure and the honor to have him in the European Parliament a few months ago to speak again about Iran and the Women Life Freedom Movement. So I'm really honored to join this discussion, and I want to answer Esther about my background. So I'm Tunisian and Belgian, and I worked with a lot of organizations regarding minorities, especially the Arab Ahwazi, the Azerbaijani, the Turks, and the Kurds, regarding the situation in Iran. So my speech today is about how Iran is destabilizing the peace and security in the Middle East, but also in the European Union through the proxies and also through spying and also, let's say, doing a lot of surveillance regarding the dissidents, political dissidents, especially who are engaged let's say, groups in Iran to defend human rights, but also women's rights and minorities' rights. So is Iran beneficial for the European Union and the free world? The answer is no, because Iran is one of the key destabilizing actors in the Middle East. You can find its footprint in terrorist organizations in the Middle East, but also in Europe, like Ukraine. What happened with the war in Ukraine is that a lot of arms were, let's say, sent from Iran to Ukraine. I mean, to make bombardments in Ukraine. It causes pain for people in that region and creates refugee crisis in so many countries of the region. But also Iran makes a threat to Israel and also to the Middle East through its proxies. We have the Houthis in Yemen, we have Hezbollah in Lebanon, we have Hamas in Gaza. So all these proxies are doing and creating destabilization in the Middle East. So making atomic bombs threatens the security in Europe, in the doors of Europe, in Ukraine, but also we witnessed also the policy of Iran regarding minorities and women and the Women Life Freedom Movement and what happened to Mahsa Amini, and also what happened also to so many other Arab Baluchi, Kurds, dissidents who were, let's say, kidnapped and held as prisoners and then executed in Iran. So what can we do? What is the answer to all these human rights violations, to all this, let's say, persecution of minorities and dissidents, political dissidents and human rights activists, as well as journalists? The answer is supporting this democratic group, supporting groups among the opposition and mainly the Azerbaijani minority or the non-Persian populations. We use the word minority, but we know that what Europe and the US and the international community don't know is that these populations make up more than 70% of the population of Iran, and we have the largest minority, Azerbaijani minority or population. And there were protesters, a lot of protesters and demonstrations in the Azerbaijani region of Iran, emphasizing on the opposition to dictatorship, demanding democracy, equal rights, and also political representation. Azerbaijanis, along with Baluch, Arabs, and Kurds, are denied their rights to be represented in the parliament, are denied their rights to be equal citizens, are denied their rights to have equal rights, and also to learn their own language, to perform their own culture. So they are really as you said, it's a majority, is not a minority, but we are using this word just to explain that they are a population which are represented as a minority by the regime, but they are not. So the Republic, the Islamic Republic of Iran, has always put the non-Persian population in a second class as citizens, and they suffered from trauma for years. And despite this oppression, Azerbaijanis organized themselves in the last 30 years outside and inside Iran, and they have human rights organizations, political parties, TV channels, media. And they also joined the movement of women life freedom. They organized demonstrations in different cities, in Brussels and in Germany, in Europe. So I believe that what Europe should do is to support democracy in Iran, to support these voices, to support human rights, and support women's gender equality, women's rights, because the movement of women, life, freedom, and the death of Mahsa Amini was like a reminder that the regime hates not only women but also women of different non-Persian descent, like Mahsa Amini, and women coming from different backgrounds who are denied their rights to be represented in the parliament, to be represented in the media, to be represented also in human rights organizations, and any cultural activists are arrested, persecuted. What Europe did was really a recognition of this movement. The Sakharov Prize was really an honor for the Iranian people, and mainly what Narges Mohammadi had also in UN. It's really a recognition that this movement is important, and that the international community should support this movement, and that they should fight against this terrorist regime and fight against the militia in Yemen, in Lebanon, in Gaza, everywhere, because unfortunately people, political dissidents, are not safe in Europe. They are European citizens, but they are kidnapped, they are targeted, and they are sometimes killed. And we witness so many cases in which all these political dissidents are targeted and killed and persecuted. So we should stop this persecution. We should call international organizations to stop this this ethnic cleansing, because it's an ethnic cleansing towards non-Persian populations in Iran, and give them equal rights, give them equal representation, political representation, and equal rights to women, and no to forced hijab, and women, life, freedom. Thank you very much, and I remain at your entire disposal for any questions. Thank you.
Chazaku Baruch. In Hebrew, Chazaku Baruch means the strength to you and to your words, and as one feminist and as one woman's rights woman advocate, I admire you and I'm honored to be on the same panel. I dedicated my life. I dedicated my life to advocate for survivors of coercive control and domestic violence, and especially for the plight of Iranian women, Kurdish, Azerbaijani, Persian, everyone. I stand right with you, and thank you so much for this incredible speech.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for your speech, and thank you for your words.
You as well, because I'm about to organize a women march. Thousands of women in Toronto.
Yeah, I will be there. I will be there. If you organize anything, you have all my support.
It's going to be Persians, everybody, Kurdish, everyone is going to come.
Thank you so much. Thank you for this initiative.
I'm going to introduce our next speaker. He's a former Israel consul to Miami, the former Israel consul general to Chicago, and the former deputy mayor of Netanya, Dr. Yitzhak Ben-Gad, who is an Orientalist and diplomat. He's also a scholar who is the author of Politics, Lies, and Videotapes, The Roadmap to Nowhere, and a number of the other books in Hebrew. He's fluent in English, Hebrew, and Arabic. He will speak about how October 7 parallels September 11 for Israelis and how it differs, and the Iranian role in this massacre. The floor is yours, Dr. Yitzhak Ben-Gad.
As a Consul General of Israel, as you said, first time in Miami, and then in Chicago, I had to meet so much Arab propaganda against us. We have to remember there are 21 Arab states in territory. They are 600 times the size of Israel. They are twice the size of the United States. In Israel, it's the size of New Jersey, not one of the biggest states in America. So talking now about what to do with these people,
Rachel, you put yourself on mute. Could you please unmute yourself?
so why don't you accept your own brothers? They're Arabs like you. They believe in Muhammad. They're Muslims like you. Nobody wants them, these people. Nobody wants them. They are provocative. They are fanatic. We saw them what happened on October 7th. They're fanatic. People don't want them. Now, we have peace with Jordan, with Egypt, with Saudi, with the Emirate, with Morocco, with Sudan, with Bahrain, but none of them would be willing to accept these people, and they are there in Gaza like sardines, one over the other. And look what they did to us. Now, millions and hundreds of millions of dollars went to Gaza. And the Hamas, instead of using this money to build homes, to build their factories, to build the cultural centers, they used to build tunnels. Tunnels. In order what? To fight Israel. And we saw the results on October 7th this year. I mean, when I think of it, I said, Makore, what's happening here with these fanatic people? And the policy of Israel today is, one, to destroy the Hamas, like Amalek, and two, to release all the hostages. So, this one. Two, we have to remember that Yasser Arafat, what's his name? Abu Mazen goes everywhere with the maps to show us the map. Okay. In 1947, the United Nations, 29th of November, decided to establish a Jewish state. Okay. And the borders of Israel then was really ridiculous. No country can defend these ridiculous borders. They started the war, and Israel captured more territory. They're asking now, go back to that decision. Wait a minute, the wheels of history don't go back. They go Kadima, ahead. In 1967, by the way, the PLO, one time we just said the PLO does not want peace. They want Israel piece by piece. They were established in 1964. No Palestinian spoke about the Palestinian state. What they had in the PLO is to fight Israel. And in 1967, again, the war, broke out, and Israel captured Judean Samaria, the whole Sinai, and the Golan Heights. Again, Arabs say, go back. But the wheels of history don't go back. They go ahead. So the problem with these people, with the Palestinians, either in Judea and Samaria or in Gaza, they have to understand, Israel is there to stay forever and ever. And whoever fights us will pay very high price, like Hamas is paying now in Gaza. Look what they did, these people to Gaza. Look what they did. Look what they did. They're holding women, children, and an infant, 10 months old, as hostages. These people may have no human rights. These people are, I won't even compare them to wild animals. because wild animals attack when they're hungry, they want to eat. These people are killing Jews for the sake of killing. So what to do with these people? And I know that the Israeli people are opening their eyes to see who is the enemy. He's the enemy. I believe even the people who have left views about to live in peace with them, to establish a Palestinian state in Judea and Samaria and Gaza, they're opening their eyes. Wow, what to do? You know, there is a story about Moses, Prophet Moses was asked by God, where do you want to have your state? You know, we used to stutter. Instead of saying Canada, he said Canaan, and we got stuck in Canaan with the Palestinians here in the land of Israel. Okay, what else?
Thank you very much, Dr. Itzhak Ben-Gad. Our next speaker of tonight's webinar is Rachel Abraham, who is the CEO of the Dona Gracia Center for Diplomacy and an Israel-based journalist. Born and raised very close to the White House, she moved to Israel in 2009 and has been living in the Jewish state ever since, where she became the author of Woman and Jihad, debating Palestinian female suicide bombings in the American, Israeli, and Arab media. She is also working with the publishing house in the United States to publish a new book about rape. Abraham has a master's degree in Middle Eastern Studies from Ben-Gurion University and a BA in Government and Politics from the University of Maryland at College Park. She will discuss the parallels between the Khojaly genocide and October 7 and how this led to Azerbaijan's support for Israel during the present war. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Raphael. On October 7th, 2023, 1,500 Hamas terrorists invaded Israel by land, sea, and air, massacring innocent youngsters at a music festival, burning people living in border communities alive in their homes, decapitating babies, and raping numerous women. Simultaneously, Hamas fired thousands of rockets into the Jewish state. Israeli forensic experts have already confirmed that Hamas is guilty of rape, torture, murder, and other grave crimes against humanity. As of today, more than 1,400 Israelis have been killed, over 5,000 have been wounded, and over 200 are held hostage by Hamas in Gaza following the October 7th massacre, which Yotam Politzer, the CEO of Israel Aid, a prominent humanitarian aid organization, compared to the Yazidi genocide in an Ezra Netanya Zoom lecture. Local Israeli media has documented countless instances of rape on October 7th. It is very hard to forget the images of 19-year-old Nama Levy being forced into a jeep by Palestinian terrorists with blood flowing between her legs, an indication that she was raped. One survivor of the Supernova Music Festival massacre told the Jerusalem Post about the rape and murder of her friend. As I am hiding, I see in the corner of my eyes that a terrorist is raping her. She was alive beforehand. She stood on her feet, bleeding from her back. But then the situation was that he was pulling her hair. She had long brown hair. As one survivor of the Rape Music Festival massacre told Tablet, women were raped next to the dead bodies of their friends. Another survivor told Haaretz of a gang rape on October 7th. They bent someone over. I realized he was raping her and passing her on to someone else in uniform. The terrorist is then said to have shot her in the head and then mutilated her body. More recently, the Israel police has started to collect the testimony of survivors, documenting how Hamas massacred, raped, and tortured en masse. Itzik Itai, who leads the emergency responders, told the Jewish Chronicle, in one house there was a couple tied to each other with their clothes down, and you could see definitely that the women underwent rape. When she is naked, face down, and her clothes had clearly been taken off, not by her, that is a woman who underwent rape. Nevertheless, despite the clear evidence that rape, torture, and other crimes against humanity occurred on the October 7th massacre, there are those who are already beginning to deny the magnitude of what happened, just as far too many deny the Holocaust. The deniers are or justifying what happened based on Israel's conduct toward the Palestinians, or they are saying these people were just killed in an exchange of fire between the IDF and the Palestinians, and no rape, torture, mutilation, and other crimes against humanity took place. Meanwhile, Hamas has threatened to wage more and more October 7th and routinely calls for the obliteration of the State of Israel, which makes one ponder whether it's more correct to refer to the October 7th massacre as a genocide. After all, as Dr. Mordechai Kadar would argue, there are many parallels to what ISIS did to the Yazidis and what Hamas did to the Jewish people on October 7th. I must stress that this is not the first time that a grave genocide took place, and there are people who denied what happened. During the Khojaly genocide, 613 innocent Azerbaijani men, women, and children were massacred in one day. Rabbi Israel Baruch wrote in Khojaly, A Crime Against Humanity, 1,275 people were taken hostage. The fate of 150 people remains unknown to this day. Over the course of the tragedy, 487 inhabitants of Khojaly were severely maimed, including 76 children. 6 Khojaly families were completely wiped out, 26 children lost to both parents, and 130 children lost to one of their parents. Of those who perished, 56 people were killed with particular cruelty, burning alive, scalping, beheading, gouging out of the eyes, and bayoneting the pregnant women in the abominum. However, Khojaly was more than just a horrific massacre, as Article 2 of the United Nations Convention on the Prevention of Genocide and the Punishment of the Crime of Genocide defines genocide as any of the following acts committed with the intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group, killing members of that group, causing serious bodily or mental harm to the members of the group, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group, the forceful transferring children to the group to another group. Serge Shazian, who was the military commander of the Armenian forces in Karabakh up until 1992, proclaimed in an interview with a Western journalist, before Khojaly, the Azerbaijanis thought they were joking with us. They thought the Armenians were not people that could raise their hand against the civilian population. We needed to put a stop to that, and that is what we did. In France, he actually admitted to perpetuating the Khojaly genocide. This right here shows a premeditated intent to murder part of the Azerbaijani population. Shamel Sabaroglu, chairman of the Association for the Recognition of the Khojaly Genocide, told the author of Khojaly, Witness of a War Crime, Tail Hidorov, the population of Khojaly had been about 7,000, but at the time of the tragedy there was only 3,000 there, as many had left. This means that almost 1 in 3 suffered physically. Remember, many more were injured in some way. 1,275 people were initially taken as prisoner. Some were returned. There is unofficial information that prisoners were taken to Armenia, then on to Libya and Syria, where their organs were sold. Haydorif wrote, according to the testimonies of the inhabitants of Khojaly, who were captured and then exchanged, and also defenders of Khojaly, men were subjected to beatings. There is also evidence of rape, including of minors, confirmed by doctors in Baku and Agdam. Azerbaijan has said that as many as 1,000 refugees were killed as they tried to flee. Others froze to death in the bitter cold winter or starved. Literally, the Armenians created conditions so that the residents of Khojaly would perish and would have no chance of survival. Huseynenov Kolovov, a survivor of the 1992 massacre, told the Turkish media, they tortured me for 8 days. They tortured little children. They beheaded many people, burned people that they tied to logs. They raped women. According to Raul Lori Contreras, murdered in the mountains, the testimony given by Jordana was particularly shocking. She was bound to a chair and slapped and hit time after time. One of the soldiers lit cigarettes for his comrades, and they took turns burning her legs with lighted cigarettes. They beat her with a metal stick, which was probably a pipe. When his arm was tired, another soldier took the pipe and continued to beat her. A soldier mashed his boot onto her face, and then she was gang raped in front of the prisoners until she passed out. However, to date, there are many who are denying the magnitude of the Khojaly genocide, just as people are beginning to deny what happened on October 7th today. Interestingly, Iran played a major role both in perpetuating the October 7th genocide and in supporting the ethnic cleansing of Azerbaijanis from the Karabakh region and the 7 Azerbaijani districts in the 1990s. For this reason, Azerbaijanis have demonstrated much support for Israel during our war against Hamas, as they themselves remember what the Armenians did to them during Khojaly and have much sympathy. This is why the famous flame towers in Baku lit up in the color of the Israeli flag, and the Israeli embassy in Baku was flooded with teddy bears, flowers, and candles by Azerbaijani people who mourned with Israel on October 7th. Azerbaijani MP Rasim Musebele told The Voice of America, "We strongly condemn the attacks that resulted in the deaths and injuries of a large number of civilians. In these difficult times, we stand with Israel." The Working Group for Azerbaijan-Israel Interparliamentary Relations issued a statement saying, "We condemn unequivocally in the strongest terms the wide-scale attacks against Israel from the Gaza Strip, accompanied by indiscriminate rocket strikes targeting civilian infrastructure objects, population centers, and civilians." They added, "We stand firmly with Israel in these hard times." Meanwhile, the Azerbaijani government continues to supply Israel with 40% of its oil needs at a time when oil cannot be more critical, and even sent over some ambulances to help the Jewish state. While the Azerbaijani people have demonstrated their support for Israel during her hour of need, the Armenians have not. In fact, the Palestinians and Armenians have a long history of cooperating with one another. As Michael Gunter noted about the Armenian terror organization Azala, which targeted Turkish diplomats in the 1970s and 1980s, a Spanish journalist, Jose Antonio Gurian, who came to know the terrorists after being maimed by one of their bombs, wrote that Hagab Hokapian, the leader of Azala, was a 24-year-old of Lebanese descent in 1973. Black September chief Ayad al-Ayad had helped him form Azala in 1975. Soon after joining the Palestinians, Hagopian found himself within the ranks of Wadi Haddad's splinter PFLP, which was George Bath's faction in the PLO. It was during his activity with Wadi Haddad that he gained most of his experience, developed many personal friendships with Palestinian leaders, and began to mimic the organizational and military tactics of Wadi Haddad, which intentionally caused innocent victims harm and thus served to discredit the Palestinian cause as terrorists. More recently, Armenian radio referred to the Hamas terrorists as militants, while the Armenian Weekly engaged in even more anti-Israel rhetoric. According to the Armenian Weekly article titled "How the Military Escalation in Gaza Could Impact the South Caucasus," on October 7, 2023, Palestinian Islamist militant group Hamas launched Operation Al-Aqsa Flood, aiming to destroy the Israeli army positions near Gaza and capture as many soldiers as possible in order to exchange them with the almost 7,000 Palestinians detained in Israeli prisons. The operation created a shockwave in Israeli society, killing more than 1,000 soldiers and civilians. As a result, Israelis started indiscriminately bombing Gaza, killing civilians and threatening ethnic cleansing through a land invasion. The danger that the escalation will turn into a regional conflict involving Iran and Hezbollah is high. Such a step would surely have devastating consequences for the region and a domino effect beyond the Middle East. Another article in the Armenian Weekly titled "Why is the U.S. government so vigilant about Israel but not Armenia?" even explains why the Armenians lack so much sympathy for the innocent victims of southern Israel who are massacred, mutilated, raped, and tortured in the cruelest and most barbaric manner possible. Understandably, most Armenians are furious at the Israeli government for permitting its arms manufacturers to provide 60% of Azerbaijan's advanced weapons. However, they are not even able to show minimum level of sympathy for the innocent civilians of Israel who suffered the worst massacre in their nation's history. As you can see, the Armenians delegitimize what happened here as well. For this reason, as an Israeli, I do everything to support Azerbaijan because they do everything to support Israel, while the Armenians clearly do not. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rachel.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Rachel.
And you know that I'm the moderator and also the last speaker of tonight's webinar. Rachel, should I introduce myself again?
Everyone knows who you are by now, Raphael.
So I will speak briefly about the Jewish-Muslim coexistence in Azerbaijan. In March 2023, Azerbaijan opened an embassy in Israel for the first time, bringing years of prospering security, economic, and tourist relations between the countries to a new high. For some, the friendship between Israel and Azerbaijan and the Shiite neighbor of Iran is a surprise. Not for me. I am a secular Shiite Muslim from Azerbaijan, and since my childhood, I have been interested in Jewish history, traditions, and culture. My affection for Judaism reflects a deeply rooted tradition in my country. Our Jewish community comprises Ashkenazi, Georgian, and Mountain Caucasian Jews and has existed for thousands of years. We are an example of Jewish-Muslim coexistence. The country has always been proud of this heritage, promoting equality and tolerance among all faiths, and enabling the Jewish community to thrive and prosper in ways unfamiliar to other parts of the Muslim world. It is common for us, for Azerbaijanis, to celebrate holidays together. Non-Jews attend Seder meals, while Jews attend Easter and Nowruz celebrations. I took part in numerous Jewish holiday celebrations held in both Ashkenazi and Mountain Jewish synagogues. For example, in December of 2021, I joined other non-Jewish Azeri guests in Hanukkah celebrations in Baku, led by Chief Ashkenazi Rabbi Shinyor Segal. We prayed together and lit the candles of the menorah. Rabbi Segal also hosted me for a Shabbat dinner at the synagogue in Baku. And when he poured kosher wine for me to drink, I kindly declined, reminding him gently that I am a Muslim. But he quipped by saying that when a rabbi pours it, you cannot refuse, and I drank. The day before Azerbaijan opened an embassy in Israel, one of my friends, a mountain Jew from Red Town, called to congratulate me on the occasion. He told me that local Islamic leaders presented him with an award for helping build a mosque in a nearby town. The Muslim community had been unable to complete the construction due to financial and technical difficulties. However, over the course of 2 months, he was able to raise funds and secure the necessary permits to get construction started again. When I called a Shiite Azeri friend to set a time to meet during my visit home to Baku in summer of the current year, he told me he wouldn't make it. The reason, he was busy meeting with the leadership of a local synagogue about raising funds to build a mikvah for the community. Such is coexistence in Azerbaijan, communities helping each other and combining their efforts, intellect, and kindness. Iran, Azerbaijan's southern neighbor and another predominantly Shiite Muslim nation, aims to wipe the state of the Jews off the map and treats Iranian Jews as second-class citizens. This is a far cry from Azeri realities. And I have to also mention this, that unlike in Europe and America, synagogues in Azerbaijan have no security and their doors remain unlocked even at night. There is no reason to fear thieves, let alone anti-Semitic bigots. Jewish people, Jewish men can proudly walk in the streets of Baku wearing a kippah or a Star of David necklace without the risk of being attacked. Jews who have come to think of Shiite Islam as an enemy should keep in mind the existence of a secular Shiite nation where Jewish life is welcomed and protected, and where Israel finds a trusted friend. I'd like to also speak very shortly about Azerbaijan and Israel and why we have to cooperate in the face of the Iranian threat. Of course, it is in the interests of both Azerbaijan and Israel to cooperate in the face of the Iranian threat. First, our embassy in London in August of 2022 was stormed by a radical religious group. After bursting into the embassy building, the group raised religious flags and chanted radical slogans on the balcony of the embassy building. And then local police intervened and the group members were escorted out of the building and detained. Around 10 people had been arrested after a gang of protesters stormed the Azerbaijani embassy in London. Then, our embassy was attacked by an armed man. He was armed with a Kalashnikov rifle. And our embassy was attacked on the International Day in memory of the victims of the Holocaust on 27th of January. The head of the security at Azerbaijan's embassy in Tehran was killed and 2 guards were wounded in a shooting attack. After this attack, we evacuated our staff from the embassy. President Ilham Aliyev strongly condemned a terrorist act against our embassy in Tehran. The Israeli embassy in Baku was targeted in summer of 2023 of the current year. And it was targeted following Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant's visit to Baku. This is precisely what the Iranians sought to threaten with their planned attack on the Israeli embassy in Baku in summer of the current year, which was fortunately thwarted in time. And the thwarting of this terrorist attack on the Israeli embassy underscores the importance of robust security measures and effective intelligence cooperation. This kind of attack was shocking. At the same time, it is not surprising. The Iranian government is always targeting Israeli citizens and its embassies abroad. At the end, I would like to say that we are proud that Azerbaijan is allied to the Jewish state, and we are proud to call Israel our trusted friend. Thank you very much. Rachel, I'd like to open the Q&A section, questions and answers. If anyone has a question, so there you could address it. Anyone have a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Does anyone have a question?
I just wanted to say is that I follow you on social media, and you do an amazing work, and a very bright, clever young man that I'm very proud of. And it was a very good introduction, that whatever you presented. And I think rather than meeting over the Zoom all the time, I think we should organize a trip to Azerbaijan. It would be incredible. As for me, the women's issues are very dear to me. I'm very passionate about it. My trips, I would not want to address that. Overall, Azerbaijan is very modern, and women are working, and there's a lot of progress. I mean, the suburban areas is something else. But I have to say is that I'm very proud of the fact that I come from Azerbaijan. If I have to be born a Jew again, I would definitely want to be born in Azerbaijan. I mean, how many countries can you see in Muslim countries do you see the richest man in Azerbaijan is a Jew? I mean, he's related to my ex-husband, but that's beside the point. I think we should organize a trip to Azerbaijan, definitely.
Thank you very much, Esther Mordechai, for your kind words. And of course, it would be a pleasure to host an event in Azerbaijan.
I've been to Azerbaijan 5 times. I'm ready to go at 6th.
The situation in Iran now. Do we see sometimes people running away from Iran, crossing the borders to Azerbaijan?
Could you repeat?
Yes. I know some people in Canada. Who run from Iran to Azerbaijan, and those are political refugees. Yes, they're quite few, and Azerbaijan protects them.
There's also
and from there they go to other countries.
There's also been people trying to infiltrate, like Iranians has been sent over the border to help the Armenians all the time.
Esther, are you in Canada?
Yeah, that's where you and I met in 2008.
You are still there?
I'm still here. I'm contemplating of moving to Israel, but that's something down the road. But I'm in Canada 35 years almost.
Okay, I will need to contact you privately.
Rachel, can you send Dr. Kedar my phone number?
A pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Actually, I'm going to send it to him in the chat as well. Actually, I'm going to send it in the main chat, my phone number, if anybody wants to contact me. I don't know Canada's code, but I'm just going to put the phone number and you figure it out.
+1.
Yeah, I did, yeah. My numbers are high in the name of God. It's 18 and 26.
Canadian.
You wrote it in the chat.
Yeah.
Anytime. I also want to say something in conclusion, that I was with former Israeli Communications Minister Ayub Kara when we were at the Azerbaijani-Iranian border, and he gave the middle finger to Qassem Soleimani when he was still alive. And I was the one who did the video of him at the border giving him basically the middle finger.
Ayub sends me so many messages. I have him on WhatsApp. He's always helpful with a lot of information as well. I know him